They bulldozed my family's ranch land for their fancy wellness park, never realizing I had the paperwork proving I owned nearly half the county. What would you do if you discovered the ultimate leverage to make your entitled HOA neighbors pay? Comment below where you're watching from. The slam of a car door jolted me awake from an afternoon nap on the porch. Blinking against the sun, I saw a woman in a sharp navy blue suit striding up my graveled driveway, her heels sinking slightly with every determined step. My old hound Max gave a half-hearted bark before flopping back down in the shade. "Excuse me, you there," she called out, waving a bright orange paper. "Are you the owner of this property?" I stood slowly, stretching my back after a long morning repairing irrigation pumps. "Yes, ma'am. Daniel Carter. My family's worked this ranch for 3 generations. How can I help you?" She gave me a quick once-over, unimpressed by my dusty jeans and worn boots. "I'm Linda Prescott, president of the Green Valley Homeowners Association. This is an official notice of violation." She shoved the paper at me. I took it, baffled. My 700 acres of pasture had been here long before the new Green Valley subdivision popped up across the road last spring. "Violation? Ma'am, I'm not part of your HOA." Linda's perfectly polished smile didn't reach her eyes. "That eyesore of a barn is clearly visible from several of our premium properties. It's decreasing our home values by at least 15%. I glanced at my grandfather's old barn. The red paint was peeling, sure, but the structure was solid and still useful. "This barn's been standing since 1941. "It's 2025, Mr. Carter. Times change. We expect it painted or removed within 30 days. It's all detailed there, along with the fines." I kept my voice steady even though my temper spiked. "There must be a mistake. Your rules don't apply to my land." Her expression hardened. "We'll see about that. By the way, what exactly are you growing over there?" She pointed toward my eastern pasture, where alfalfa was just starting to sprout. "Alfalfa, same as always." She made a note on her phone. "Interesting. The board will want to know." Without another word, she clicked back to her shiny SUV and drove away. I glanced down at the violation notice. It bore an official stamp and threatened a $250 daily fine. At the bottom was a sticky note that read, "We should discuss the east section. Call me." I crumpled it and shoved it in my pocket. City folks moving out to the edge of town always thought they could bully ranchers around, but I had real work to do. That evening, while making dinner, my phone buzzed. It was Alex Ramirez, my childhood friend and now the county clerk. "Dan, are you sitting down?" His voice sounded tight. "What's wrong? Another possum in your office?" I joked, remembering the time a raccoon had sent him scrambling onto his desk. "I wish. Listen, something weird just happened. Linda Prescott came in with documents about your east pasture. She filed permits." "Permits? For what?" "A community pool, tennis courts, and a garden. She's claiming that parcel of land belongs to their development. Says it was never properly surveyed when your grandfather bought the adjoining lots. That's ridiculous. I have the deeds right here." She had papers too. They were stamped and filed. Crews are scheduled to start clearing tomorrow morning. I nearly dropped the phone. Tomorrow? They can't just bulldoze my alfalfa. That's almost 60 acres. I tried slowing it down, but everything had the right signatures. Something's off, Dan. You'd better find those deeds tonight.
After we hung up, I rushed to my little office corner in the living room where I kept all the ranch files. Pulling open the old metal cabinet my father had kept so carefully, I dug through the folders with shaking hands. There it was, the original deed from 1941, plus every parcel my grandfather purchased through the 50s and 60s. I spread them across the kitchen table. Everything looked right. The east pasture was clearly ours. But then I noticed something. A newer survey from just 5 years ago, when I'd briefly considered selling off a parcel, showed a slight discrepancy. Only about 15 feet, but it pushed the border eastward compared to the old survey. At the time, I dismissed it as modern equipment being more precise. Could Linda have twisted that tiny discrepancy into a claim for my land?
I tried calling Alex back, but it went straight to voicemail. Then I dialed the sheriff's office. Sheriff Collins speaking. Sheriff, it's Daniel Carter out at Carter Ranch. I think someone's planning to illegally bulldoze part of my alfalfa field tomorrow morning. There was a pause. Ah, Dan, yeah, I got a call about that today. Sounds like some kind of property line dispute with that new Green Valley development. It's not a dispute, Sheriff. They're trying to steal my land. Now, Dan, let's not throw around accusations. Tell you what, I'll come out first thing tomorrow and make sure everything's legal before any machinery moves. I thanked him and hung up, feeling a little better. Sheriff Collins had gone to school with my dad. I trusted he'd handle things fairly. As the sun set over my pastures, I sat on the porch watching the lights flicker on in those oversized houses across the road. What was Linda really after? The east field wasn't even visible from their subdivision. Then it hit me. Water rights. My property controlled access to Carter Creek, the stream running along the back end of my land. The Green Valley folks had been dealing with water pressure problems all summer. I'd overheard their complaints at the general store. Were they trying to get access to my creek? I couldn't sleep. Instead, I dug through more of my grandfather's old files. Around 3 a.m., I found something interesting. A county map from 1962. It showed that my family hadn't just owned this ranch, but nearly all the land in a 30-mile radius, including where Green Valley now stood. Over the years, we'd sold off parcels as ranching grew less profitable. But what other rights might we still hold? Water rights? Mineral rights? Easements? Just before dawn, I finally dozed off at the kitchen table. Paper spread everywhere. The sound of heavy machinery jolted me awake. I ran outside in my socks to see 3 bulldozers rumbling down the access road toward my east field. Linda's white SUV led the way, followed by a convoy of cars bearing the Green Valley HOA logo. Where was Sheriff Collins? I grabbed my phone to call again, but before I could dial, the first bulldozer smashed through my fence line and into my alfalfa. The roar of engines carried across the morning air, too deep, too loud for tractors. My heart pounded as I threw on my boots and ran out in my pajamas. 3 massive yellow bulldozers were ripping into my crop, the green shoots I'd carefully planted being churned under like trash. My stomach twisted. Those acres were meant to feed hundreds of people. "Hey, stop!" I shouted, waving my arms. The operators couldn't hear me over the roar. Then I spotted them. Linda Prescott, and 5 others in matching Green Valley HOA polos, sipping coffee by her SUV as they watched the destruction like it was morning entertainment. I stormed over, mud splattering my pajama pants. "What the hell do you think you're doing? This is my land." Linda turned slowly, tilting her head as though she were surprised to see me on my own property. Not a strand of her perfect blonde bob moved. "Good morning," she said sweetly, as if we were neighbors meeting for coffee. We're finally addressing the neighborhood eyesore. The board voted unanimously. I pointed toward the bulldozers. Tell them to stop. Those are my crops. She sighed like I was a stubborn child. Actually, according to county records, this section was never properly registered to your family. It's been designated as community land for decades. From her designer tote, she pulled out a folder and flipped it open to reveal a property map covered in red markings. My land had been sliced nearly in half. "That's impossible," I snapped. "My grandfather bought this entire ranch in 1941. I have the deeds." "Well, these are the official records," Linda replied, snapping the folder shut before I could study it. She smiled. "We're creating something beautiful here. A community garden with raised beds, a meditation labyrinth, even a koi pond. Property values will rise at least 8% once this mess is cleared." A man standing beside her, Doug Williams, the face of their marketing brochures, nodded eagerly. "We've already sold sponsorship benches to 15 families. Construction starts next week." My hands shook as I pulled out my phone and dialed the sheriff's office again. While the call rang, I watched helplessly as the bulldozers pushed deeper into my field, destroying more of my crop by the second. "You can't do this," I shouted. "This is theft, destruction of private property." "It's progress," Linda corrected, turning away to speak to a woman with an iPad. They all laughed. Finally, Sheriff Collins picked up on the fourth ring, and I frantically explained what was happening.
"They're destroying my crops right now. I need officers here immediately," I shouted into the phone. There was a long pause on the line. "I understand you're upset," Sheriff Collins said carefully, "but from what I'm seeing in the system, this looks like a civil property dispute. We can't intervene without a court order." "What? They're trespassing and tearing up my land?" "According to the records I'm looking at," the sheriff continued slowly, "the property lines are unclear. My advice is to contact your lawyer." Something in his voice made my skin crawl. Sheriff Collins had known my family for years. Why was he suddenly acting like we were strangers? "I'll come by later to take a report," he added, then hung up before I could argue. When I looked up from my phone, Linda Prescott was watching me with a satisfied smile. She knew exactly how that conversation had gone. "Everything okay?" she asked sweetly. "The sheriff's coming," I lied, trying to sound confident. Her smile didn't waver. "Wonderful. He can see our permits." She handed me a thick stack of papers, all stamped and approved by the county last month. "We tried to tell you about this at the neighborhood meeting, but you never attend, do you?" "Because I don't live in your neighborhood," I shouted, heat rising in my face. "I've lived on this ranch my whole life. My grandfather built that barn with his own hands in 1941. "And it's been dragging down property values ever since," said Doug Williams, checking his watch. "Will you be okay here, Linda?" "Perfectly fine," she assured him. The other board members climbed into their cars and drove off, leaving her behind. "I understand change is hard," Linda continued smoothly, "but progress is inevitable. The suburbs are growing, and frankly, ranching doesn't fit the community vision anymore." I stood frozen as a bulldozer shredded the irrigation system my father had installed 30 years ago. Pipes burst, spraying water into the air. "That's enough for today," Linda called out, glancing at her watch. "We'll continue tomorrow." The machines backed away, leaving deep scars in my ruined field.
6 acres of alfalfa, nearly a fifth of my yearly income, were gone. "This isn't over," I growled, my voice shaken with rage. Linda placed a manicured hand on my shoulder. I jerked away, but she only smiled. "It actually is, but we're willing to be reasonable. If you voluntarily surrender the remaining disputed acreage, we won't bill you for today's land clearing services." She turned toward her car, pausing to watch as workers hammered a massive sign into my soil. "Future home of Green Valley Community Gardens and Wellness Center." As her SU rolled away, dust trailing behind it, I spotted Alex Ramirez's county truck barreling down my driveway. He jumped out, face pale. "I just heard. I came as soon as I could." His eyes swept across the destruction. "This is insane. How could they possibly get permits for this?" "Someone at the county office helped them," I said, the realization hitting like ice in my gut. "But who and why?" Alex shook his head. "I don't know, but there's something else. On my way here, I saw surveyors at your north field. Their truck had the Green Valley logo." My blood ran cold. They weren't stopping with just this field. "We need to figure out how they falsified those records," Alex said urgently. "This isn't just about my ranch anymore," I finished, staring at the ruined ground. "If they can do this to me, they can do it to anyone." Back inside, I went straight to my grandfather's old study. Behind a framed painting of the ranch was a small safe I hadn't opened in years. Inside were the original property deeds, surveys, and maps dating back to when my great-grandfather first settled this county. What I found inside made my hands tremble with equal parts fury and determination. By this time tomorrow, they'd regret ever setting foot on my land. I couldn't sleep. The image of bulldozers tearing through my field kept flashing in my mind. At dawn, I dressed and called Alex. "I need every document on the Oak Ridge Estates development," I told him. "Birth certificates, building permits, everything." "That could take weeks," Alex warned. "I need it by noon." 3 hours later, I was buried in county records at Alex's office. My coffee sat cold and forgotten as my hands flipped through dusty folders from the 1920s. "Found something," Alex called from his computer. "The original land survey from when your great-grandfather parceled out the county. Look who signed off on it." I leaned over his shoulder. The signature at the bottom made my heart race. "Judge William Prescott," Alex confirmed. "Linda's great-great-grandfather. He knew exactly where the property lines were supposed to be." Before I could process it, my phone buzzed with a text. The HOA was holding an emergency meeting tonight to discuss Phase 2 of their project. More of my land was already at risk. Back home, I dragged a heavy trunk down from the attic. Inside were my grandfather's papers, ledgers, letters, maps, and more.
I found a leather folder with gold lettering, county water rights. I read it 3 times to be sure. The water lines that fed the entire Oak Ridge Estates ran directly through my property. My family had granted an easement, but with strict conditions. My hands were shaking as I called my old college roommate Sandra, now a lawyer in the city. "How fast can you get here?" I asked. "What's wrong?" she said. "I'm about to go to war with 200 angry homeowners," she replied. The Green Valley HOA meeting room was packed when I arrived that evening. I spotted Linda Prescott at the front, wearing a crisp blue blazer with the HOA logo. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled.
She tapped her manicured nails impatiently while people settled. I slipped into a seat in the back row. Nobody noticed me. "As you can see from these beautiful renderings," Linda said, pointing to colorful posters, "Phase 2 will convert another 10 acres of that unsightly farmland into our new tennis complex and walking trails." The crowd clapped politely. A man in golf clothes stood. "What about the farmer who lives there? Won't he complain?" Linda waved her hand dismissively. "Our legal team has confirmed that land was improperly registered decades ago. It rightfully belongs to our community now." My blood boiled, but I kept my face calm and waited for the right moment. "With the tennis complex, our property value should increase by at least 15%, Linda added, smiling. "We've already hired the bulldozers for next Monday." When she finally opened the floor for comments, I stood and walked slowly to the microphone. The room quieted as heads turned. "Good evening," I said. "I'm the farmer whose land you bulldozed yesterday and whose land you plan to take on Monday." Linda's smile tightened. "Sir, this is a private HOA meeting." "Before you continue with your plans," I interrupted calmly, "I'd like to introduce myself properly. My name is Daniel Carter. My great-grandfather helped settle this county in 1901. Our family has farmed here for over a century." I opened my folder and put the first document up on the projector, a yellowed map showing the original county divisions. "This is the original land survey signed by Judge William Prescott in 1922. Does that name sound familiar, Linda?" Her face flushed. Several board members whispered to one another. "You're claiming my land was improperly registered?" I continued. "Our family trust still owns the mineral and water rights to every inch of land within a 30-mile radius, including under your homes." The crowd murmured nervously. "That's simply not possible," Linda snapped. "Our development has all proper—" "I've spent a day with county officials," I said evenly. "It seems your HOA has been operating without proper authorization for years. Your water supply runs through my land on easements that can be revoked with 30 days' notice." An older man stood up. "Are you threatening to cut off our water?" "I'm stating facts," I replied. "Just as it's a fact that your development was built on a conditional land use agreement requiring a 200-acre agricultural buffer zone, the very land you bulldozed yesterday and plan to bulldoze Monday." Linda stepped forward, face red. "We have documentation." "Forged documentation," a voice from the doorway cut in. Everyone turned. Sheriff Collins walked in, flanked by Alex Ramirez and 3 county officials. Alex was carrying a large cardboard box labeled evidence. "This meeting is now part of a formal county investigation," the sheriff announced. "We have reason to believe property records were deliberately falsified." Chaos erupted. Homeowners shouted questions. Linda tried to regain control but was drowned out. Doug Williams, the HOA vice president, grabbed the microphone. "This is ridiculous. We followed every legal process." Sandra stepped forward from behind the sheriff. "Then you won't mind explaining why the permit applications for your community garden project were backdated and signed by a county clerk who retired 3 years ago?" People gasped. All eyes swung to Linda, who was frantically texting. "Or why," Sandra continued, "the property maps submitted to the county don't match the official surveys from any year since 1937. A young woman holding a baby stood. "Are we going to lose our homes over this?" "That's not my goal," I said, looking directly at her. But the destruction of my family's land has to stop, and those responsible must be held accountable." Linda suddenly pushed through the crowd toward the exit. Sheriff Collins nodded to a deputy who stepped in front of the door. "Miss Prescott," the sheriff said, "we'll need you to stay for questioning." I gathered my documents while frightened homeowners surrounded the board, demanding answers. This wasn't just about my ranch anymore. These people had been lied to, too. As I turned to leave, Doug grabbed my arm. "You have no idea who you're dealing with," he hissed. "Linda's husband is a state senator. This little stunt will cost you everything." I gently removed his hand and kept walking, the folder with the water rights records tucked under my arm, and a hard, cold determination settling in my chest.
I'm not the one who bulldozed someone else's property based on forged documents. The night air felt cool on my face as I leaned against my truck, suddenly exhausted. This victory would be short-lived. Linda had connections and money. The real fight was only beginning, and she'd come back harder than ever. My phone buzzed. It was Alex. "You need to get back to the ranch right now," he said, voice tight. "Something's happening at your place." I floored it. As I crested the hill above the property, I saw flashing lights, fire trucks, police cars, and, in the distance, orange flames licking the side of my century-old barn. They'd hit back faster than I expected. I woke to the whir of a drone buzzing above the farmhouse. I scrambled for my binoculars and caught sight of Linda herself standing at the edge of my property with a controller in her hands. She was mapping more of my land. For 3 straight weeks after the county meeting, the Green Valley HOA attacked me from every angle. They froze me out of local businesses. The grocery store owner suddenly couldn't order my favorite coffee. The hardware store claimed they were out of the tractor parts I needed. I wasn't gonna let them win, not after what they did to my alfalfa. When I drove into town that morning, people stared. Someone had posted a flyer on the community board. "Emergency home meeting, addressing the farmland menace." My farm, the place that fed half the county, was being branded a menace. "Don't let it get to you," Alex said, handing me a coffee as I pushed into his county office. "I've been digging through old records all night." He spread a yellowed map across his desk. It showed property lines from 1937 with my grandfather's signature in the corner. Alex pointed to the fine print at the bottom. "Your grandfather included a special clause when he sold the original plots where Oak Ridge Estates now stands. No development can alter the natural watershed. The moment they bulldozed your field, they violated that clause." My phone rang. Maria Gonzalez, an Oak Ridge resident I'd met at the farmer's market, was on the line, panic in her voice. "They've cut off our water," she said. "The HOA posted a notice, claims there's contamination from your farm. We have children and elderly folks with no water." "That's impossible," I said. "It's on their notice," she cried. "It says we must buy bottled water from the HOA office at $20 a gallon until the contamination is resolved." My blood boiled. Linda wasn't just going after me. She was using my land as an excuse to profit from her neighbors. Back at the ranch, I found surveyors marking another section. Doug Williams, the HOA vice president, stood watching with his arms crossed. Linda had been forced to step down, but she was still pulling the strings. "You're trespassing," I said calmly. "We have new documentation," Doug insisted, flanked by 2 security guards wearing Green Valley patches. "This parcel was rezoned in 1997. It belongs to the community now." I studied their faces.
These weren't professional surveyors, just board members pretending to be officials. I gave them 1 minute to get off my land. Doug smirked. Your threats were recorded at the meeting. The sheriff's on our side now. Little did they know I'd been recording too. Every word, every threat from that night. A local news van pulled up. I'd called a favor from an old school friend who was now a reporter. On camera, she said, "We're investigating reports that the Green Valley HOA cut off water to its own residents and claims of illegal land seizure." I showed her the bulldozed field, the fake survey stakes, and the HOA's water bills compared to county rates. The story aired at 6. By 7, my phone would not stop ringing. Oak Ridge residents were furious, and not at me. They were furious at Linda and the HOA. The next morning, county water trucks rolled into Oak Ridge. Alex had arranged emergency deliveries so families wouldn't have to buy water from the HOA. For a moment, it felt like we were turning the tide. Then came the lawsuit notice. The HOA sued me for alleged environmental damage and reduced property values, $2 million in damages and immediate seizure of my land. My hands shook as I read it. This wasn't about a community garden anymore. Linda and her cronies wanted everything. I stared at the lawsuit's paperwork. The attorney's farm listed on the filing? Whitfield Holdings, LLC, Linda Prescott's company. She wasn't just HOA president, she had a private stake tied into all of this. I wasn't the one who'd done the dirty work. But the barn burned, the crops were gone, my neighbors had been scammed out of water, and now Linda was trying to bury me in court papers in anger. I gripped the folder with the water rights records, and a hard, cold determination settled in my chest. They'd started something they didn't understand, and I wasn't done fighting. She was personally profiting from this fight. I called Alex immediately. I need every record of property transactions in Oak Ridge Estates for the last 5 years. What we uncovered left us stunned. Linda and 3 board members had been quietly buying up homes at below market prices. They'd written rules designed to force people out, then swooped in to purchase the properties cheap. And the so-called community garden? It wasn't about spiting me. It sat directly above a natural spring, the most valuable water source in our drought-prone county. I called an emergency town meeting at the courthouse. Every Oak Ridge resident showed up, along with farmers and townsfolk from across the county. Standing before them, I laid it all out. The water price gouging, the property scheme, and most importantly, the water rights grab. Your HOA has been charging you triple the normal water rates, I said, projecting bills beside county rate sheets. They claimed it was county fees, but those fees went directly into companies owned by your board members. Gasps spread through the crowd. Linda and Doug tried shouting me down, but the evidence was too clear. There's more, I continued, pointing to the property maps. The garages you built 5 years ago? They actually sit on my land. I never complained because I believed in being neighborly. The room erupted. Neighbors turned on Linda and Doug, voices rising in anger. And the biggest lie of all, I said, once it quieted, is that this was ever about property values or gardens. It's about this. I switched to the underground water survey map. They want the spring beneath my field. In this county, whoever controls water controls everything." Linda's face went pale. She hadn't known I had the geological surveys. As the meeting dissolved into chaos, Sheriff Davis stood. "Based on the evidence, I'm opening an official investigation into the Green Valley HOA board." Linda lunged for the door, but deputies stopped her cold. Across the room, Alex met my eyes. The trap had sprung. But later, walking to my truck under the courthouse lights, I spotted a figure watching from the shadows. The fight wasn't over. It was only getting darker. The courtroom fell silent as the judge's gavel cracked. "In light of the evidence, I find the Green Valley HOA board guilty of document fraud and illegal land seizure." Linda leapt up, face crimson. "This is outrageous! Do you know who my husband is?" The judge didn't flinch. "Mrs. Prescott, you're facing criminal charges and a $50,000 fine. One more outburst, and I'll add contempt of court." Walking outside, I was swarmed by news crews. "How does it feel to win against the HOA that tried to steal your family's ranch?" a reporter asked. "This isn't just my victory," I said. "It's for every homeowner they bullied with fake rules and hidden fees." A week later, flyers hit every Oak Ridge mailbox, exposing Linda's secret luxury condo purchases with HOA funds. By nightfall, neighbors were demanding new elections. The following morning, Maria Gonzalez, now elected HOA president, knocked on my door. "We've uncovered the truth about the water scam," she said. "We want to make things right." 3 months later, I stood at my fence line watching neighborhood kids plant sunflowers, a living border we'd designed together. A moving truck rumbled past. Linda sat in the passenger seat, glaring, as her house sold for half its value. Alex stepped beside me. "Your grandfather would be proud," he said quietly. "You didn't just save the ranch, you showed this community what it means to be real neighbors."